The image you're looking at appeared on the front page of the Times newspaper, its web page, cyber version, virtual version, January 1st, 2023. Amber Heard's Avengers. Her team in Britain fight back against online hatred. Indeed, these are women who support Amber Heard. Perhaps, and I say perhaps, without having followed the trial in Virginia, in which it was proved that she had abused Johnny Depp, as well as defaming him. These lovelies, and believe me, they're not so lovely. Charlotte Proudman, she is a barrister and a so-called academic and a head case. Next to her is Jessica Taylor, who's a lesbian. She has tattoos on both her arms and is a dedicated man-hater. Next to her is Eve Barlow, who is Heard's lesbian lover. Heard is bisexual. And then there are two other women. They have helped the star with the fallout from her legal cases with Johnny Depp. The article begins, in his toxic legal battles with Amber Heard, Johnny Depp had an army of Depphead superfans to fight his corner. Some turned up every day at court. Thousands upon thousands championed his cause online and poured vitriol on those who dared question their hero. That is not quite right. Well, it lacks context. It will be recalled that initially Depp sued the Sun newspaper in England and lost. Heard was a witness, and his name was mud. He brought this action because he had been, his reputation had been trashed, including in Hollywood. It has now been restored because a lot of these so-called Depp heads were women, not necessarily fans of Depp. Indeed, Charlotte Proudman in particular should study the video of the cross-examination of Amber Heard, because she was proved a liar, and don't forget it was Johnny Depp who had his finger, the top of his finger sliced off, not her. This is just absolute feminist dross. Jamie Shrive is an academic who researches political perspectives on violence against women. Her wife, Jessica Taylor, is a chartered psychologist and author of the Sunday Times bestseller Sexy But Psycho. I wrote an article about Taylor a while back, her and Jessica Valenti. I called it Jessica and Jessica Dumb and Dumber. And she's a woman who regards any criticism of her as misogyny. She's good as told me that. And they're just assuming that Heard was the victim here. Heard was taken to court in Virginia by Depp for defamation. The case was based around Heard's claim that she had been the victim of domestic abuse. Well, yes. And it says that the Sun found that the statement that Depp was a wife beater was substantially true. Well, now it's been proven that it was substantially untrue, totally untrue in fact. It is always assumed that in an abusive relationship the abuser is the male. In fact, this wasn't the case. As I pointed out elsewhere, in a Full Throat Timeline hangout, as other people have pointed out, there were reasons that Depp was the victim. One is that he grew up in a fairly abusive environment. His mother was abusive towards him. They reconciled in 2016, shortly before her death. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that he married a much younger woman, who incredibly physically attractive, ticks all the right boxes. Well, ticked all the right boxes for me until I heard about her defecating in his bed. And he was afraid of losing her. Taylor says the deliberate use of psychiatric diagnosis and mental health to discredit women in court is, well, she doesn't like that. I actually give her credit for that. She appears to be if not a disciple of Thomas Sars, as you certainly heard of him. But although Sars rejected the chimera of mental illness, he said people should be responsible for their actions. He said of one man, I think the guy who tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan, that he should be in prison. People like that should be in prison. Not pleading some sort of mental defect. And it's the fact that part of the reason Depp won the trial, not just the evidence against Heard, was that he owned his mistakes, while as Heard, she never did anything wrong. Taylor says, I was horrified but not surprised to read that Amber had been diagnosed with histrionic personality disorder by a psychiatrist who testified for Depp. Yeah, I mean, this disorder doesn't exist. I've compared this sort of thing with road rage. If a motorist gets out of his car and batters another motorist senseless, you don't say he was suffering from road rage disorder, no. And so with histrionic personality disorder, it's a description. It's another way of saying Amber Heard is a cunt. The feminists who usually support victims were silent this time, Shrive added, perhaps because the trolling was so huge. It's not normal to be subject to that level of threat. It's a sort of psychological warfare. Well, the feminists, some feminists, and certainly most women, were actually supporting the victim, the real victim, Johnny Depp. A lot of lawyers commented on this case, on LawTube, as YouTube lawyers call it, and many of them were women. Emily D. Baker, Natalie Lawyer Chick, Andrea Burkhardt, to name just three. And they all sided with Depp because they're lawyers, and they heard the evidence and they believed the evidence of Depp, and they certainly didn't believe the evidence of Heard. So basically this is rubbish, and it's really shameful that the Times of all newspapers should publish crap like this.